Good day everyone, my name is Almami Pilangrea and my cutie is my pamangkin. So, pwede mo bang ipakilala ang iyong sarili?
Ako po si Clarence B. Aguilar, 11 years old, grade 6, pupil. Nakatira po ako dito sa Rangayan ng Adanan Isabela.
So, he is a grade 6 student. So, ako muna ang magbabasa and makinig ka lang sa akin. The Singa sang Nila Utama, an imaginative adventures. King was restless by nature and wanted to travel to faraway places. He loved hunting wild animals, so when he heard that there were stags in the jungles of Tanjong Bentam, which were not easy to hunt, he was excited and took with him a great fleet of ships to Tanjong Bentam. When the king arrived upon the island, he had his subjects had a hunting expedition that lasted several hours, slaying many wild and savage beasts. But no stags. This disappointed the king, for he had a sense of unfulfillment in his heart. Suddenly, a large stag darted out of the bush in front of Sang Nila Utama, giving the king a shock. But the king drew his silver dagger and hurled it at the stag, only grazing the animal. The stag began to run, and the king forced it. In those days, it was either your feet or nothing. The stag ran through the jungle and darted up a knoll. The king followed the stag up the hill, but upon reaching the smith, the stag was nowhere to be seen. There was a large rock, so the king climbed it and looked the land and sea spread out around him. In the distance, he saw a stretch of which said an island. Sang Nila Utama was fascinated by the sight of this land. He turned to one of his subjects who had followed him. What is the name of that island? The subject looked into the distance and smiled. That is Timasi, Your Highness. Then we were going there. The king ordered he fled to set sail, and they began on their journey toward the land. Suddenly, once clear, blue skies were covered with black clouds. Heavy rain poured from them, and strong winds of white threatened to tear the ships apart. The ship carrying the Sang Nila Utama was in the very eye of the storm. The crew lowered his sail, started to build the water from the ship, and get most of the cargo for jettison. However, an idea came to the king's head. He remembered a story his grandfather told him of how one of his ancestors became the city, and that his ground was the only thing which belonged to his ancestor. He removed his crown immediately and threw it into the sea. All at once the storm broke as suddenly as it started. The skies began to clear, and the crew gave a shout of joy and set sail once more to the island of Timasi. When the king spotted upon the island is a creature spotted out of nowhere, and the king and his men were struck by the magnificent creature. It was large and moved with grace, had a black head covered covered in a foreign name, which stitch, neck, and the red body. When the king drew his bow and arrow, the beasts stared back at him with golden eye and let out. A king drew his defining no red body. When the king drew his bow, arrow the best struck back at him with golden eye and let out a deafening roar before leaping into the jungle. What sort of animal was that? The king asked. A wise old man stopped forth. I have seen animals in port- portraits for the far west. Perhaps this is Singa, but I wonder how it got all the way where. There must be a great place if it birds such as a beautiful animal. Let us live here on the island of Singapore. So, tapos na ako and ikaw naman ang magbabasa.
The Singa. The Singa sang Nila Utama, an imaginative, adventurous king was restless by nature and wanted to travel to faraway places. He loved hunting wild animals, so when he heard that there were stags in the jungles of Tanjong Bentam, which were not easy to hunt, he was excited and took with him a great fleet of ships to Tanjong Bentam. When the king arrived upon the island, he and his subject had a hunting expedition that lasted several hours, slaying many wild and savage beasts, but no stags. This disappointed the king, for he had a sense of youthful fulfillment in his heart. Suddenly, a large stag darted out of the bush in front of Sang Nila Utama, giving the king a shock. But the king drew his silver dagger and hurled it at the stag, only grazing the animal. The stag began to run, and the king pursued it. Into those days, it was either your feet or nothing. The stag ran through the jungle and darted up a knoll. The king followed the stag up the hill, but upon reaching the summit, the stag was nowhere to be seen. There was a large rock, so the king climbed it and looked the land and sea spread out around him. In the distance, he saw a stretch of white sand, an island. Sang Nila Utama was fascinated by the sight of the island. He turned to one of his subjects who had followed him. What is the name of the island? The subject looked into distance and smiled. That is Timaset, your highest. Then we are going there. The king ordered his fleet to set sail, and they began on their journey towards the island. Suddenly, the once clear blue skies were covered with black clouds. Heavy rain poured from them, and strong bursts of wind threatened to tear the ships apart. The ship carrying Sang Nila Utama was in the very eye of the storm. The crew lowered the sail, started to bail the water from the ships, and get most of the cargo for jettisoning. However, an idea came to the king's head. He remembered a story his grandfather told him of how one of his ancestors became the Sea King, and that his crown was the only thing which belonged to his ancestor. He removed his crown immediately and threw it into the sea. All at once the storm broke as suddenly as it started. The skies began to clear, and the crew gave a shout of joy and set sail once more to the island of Timasik. When the king stepped upon the island, a creature stepped out of nowhere, and the king and his men were awestruck by the magnificent creature. It was large and moved with grace, had a black head covered in a furry mane, a whitish neck, and red body. When the king drew his bow and arrow, the beast stared back at him with golden eyes and let out a deafening roar before leaping into the jungle. What sort of animal was that? The king asked. A wise old man stepped forth. I have seen animals in portraits from the far west. Perhaps this is Singa, but I wonder how it got all the way here. This must be a great place if it breeds such a beautiful animal. Let us live here on the island of Singapore.
Okay, thank you. And um, abangan na lang po natin ang susunod na session. Thank you.